The morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow over the countertops cluttered with breakfast remnants. As I reached for my coffee mug, I noticed Sarah's phone lying next to it, screen lit up with a message notification. Normally, I wouldn't think twice about it. Sarah was often glued to her phone for work emails or chatting with friends. But today, something about that notification nagged at me. I picked up the phone, intending to simply silence it, when the message caught my eye. It wasn't from a familiar contact. The sender's name, Jake, stood out starkly against the screen. My heart skipped a beat as I read the words. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. Love, Jake." For a moment I froze, unable to process what I was seeing. The world around me seemed to blur, and the kitchen suddenly felt stifling. A million thoughts raced through my mind all at once. Who was Jake? Why was he saying these things to Sarah? My hands trembled as I scrolled through the conversation, each message more damning than the last. Images and words burned into my mind, intimate details exchanged freely, plans made for future rendezvous, and a level of familiarity that cut through me like a knife. Tears welled up in my eyes as I struggled to comprehend the betrayal staring back at me from Sarah's phone. "Mike, is everything okay?" Sarah's voice shattered the silence, and I turned to see her standing in the doorway, concern etched across her face. Her eyes flickered to her phone in my hands, widening in realization. I found this," I managed to choke out, my voice hoarse and cracked. I held up the phone, unable to meet her gaze. Sarah's face drained of color, her features contorting in a mix of shock and guilt. "Mike, it's not what you think," she stammered, taking a hesitant step toward me. Anger surged within me, mixing with the raw pain and betrayal. "Then what is it, Sarah?" I demanded, my voice rising despite my efforts to keep calm. "Who is Jake? How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. "Mike, please, let me explain," she pleaded, her voice trembling. I shook my head, feeling a bitter mix of disbelief and hurt. "Explain what, Sarah? That you've been cheating on me?" The words hung heavy in the air, filling the room with a palpable tension. I didn't mean for this to happen," she began, her voice breaking. "It's complicated." My mind raced with 1,000 questions, but all I could manage was a hollow laugh. "Complicated? How long?" I pressed, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping in resignation. "Since last year," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "It was a mistake, Mike. I never meant to hurt you." Her words echoed in my mind, but they offered little solace. The weight of her confession settled heavily on my shoulders, crushing me beneath its unbearable truth. As I stood there, clutching her phone like a lifeline, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Days passed in a blur of restless nights and strained conversations. Sarah's admission hung between us like a heavy fog, suffocating any semblance of normalcy in our home. Every glance, every touch felt tainted by the betrayal I couldn't shake from my mind. I found myself obsessing over the details of Sarah's affair with Jake. The initial shock had given way to a relentless need to understand how long this deception had been going on and how deep it ran. Late at night, when sleep eluded me, I would find myself scrolling through Sarah's phone, searching for more clues, more evidence that might shed light on the extent of her infidelity. The messages with Jake were sporadic now, carefully hidden amidst innocuous conversations and work-related emails. It was as if Sarah had perfected the art of deception, weaving a web of lies that kept me at arm's length while she continued her clandestine affair. One evening, as Sarah busied herself in the kitchen, I couldn't resist the urge any longer. I waited until she was distracted, then quietly slipped into our bedroom where her phone lay charging on the nightstand. My hands trembled as I unlocked it with the familiar pattern, heart racing with a mixture of guilt and desperation. I scrolled through her messages methodically, searching for any new exchanges with Jake. The conversations were sparse but intimate. Pet names, inside jokes, promises of future meetings. Each word felt like a dagger twisting deeper into my already wounded heart. Then, a new message popped up from an unfamiliar number. My pulse quickened as I read the message. "Can't wait to see you again, babe. Missing you already." It wasn't signed, but the familiarity of the tone sent a shiver down my spine. Who else was she seeing? How many others were there? The question swirled in my mind, threatening to overwhelm me. I wanted to confront Sarah, to demand answers, but a part of me feared what I would uncover next. That night, lying in bed next to Sarah, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that hung heavy in the air between us. She slept soundly beside me, oblivious to the turmoil raging inside me. How could she be so calm, so composed, when our marriage lay in ruins around us? The next morning I found myself avoiding Sarah's gaze, unable to look at her without seeing the deception etched in every line of her face. She tried to reach out, to bridge the growing chasm between us, but her touch felt like fire against my skin, a painful reminder of the intimacy she had shared with someone else. I knew then that I couldn't continue like this, trapped in a marriage tainted by lies and betrayal. But as much as I longed to confront Sarah and demand the truth, I hesitated. Fear of what I might uncover held me back, trapping me in a web of uncertainty and doubt. Yet deep down, I knew that I couldn't ignore the truth forever. The initial shock had given way to a relentless determination to uncover the full extent of Sarah's betrayal. Only then could I begin to decide what my next steps would be: to confront Sarah and demand the truth, or to quietly plan my escape from a marriage that had been built on lies. The tension in our home had become palpable, a silent specter haunting every corner and conversation. Days turned into weeks as I wrestled with the truth I had uncovered, unable to escape the gnawing sense of betrayal that had taken root in my heart. I couldn't continue living in limbo, trapped between the desire for answers and the fear of facing the reality of Sarah's infidelity. One evening, after a particularly tense dinner, I finally mustered the courage to confront her. "Sarah," I began, my voice trembling despite my efforts to sound composed. She looked up from her plate, her eyes widening slightly at the seriousness in my tone. "What is it, Mike?" Her voice wavered, betraying a hint of apprehension. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. "I need to talk to you about something," I started carefully, choosing my words with deliberate precision. Her gaze flickered nervously, but she nodded, setting her fork down and giving me her full attention. "Okay," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, the weight of my words hanging heavily in the air between us. "I found your messages, Sarah," I finally admitted, unable to meet her gaze. For a moment, there was silence. Sarah's face paled, her eyes darting away as if searching for an escape. "Mike, she began, her voice catching in her throat. "Don't," I interrupted, my tone sharp with anger and hurt. "Don't try to deny it, Sarah. I saw the messages." Her shoulders slumped, resignation settling over her features. "Mike, I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Sorry." The word echoed hollowly in my ears, devoid of any meaning that could ease the pain in my chest. I had expected denial, anger, perhaps even justification, but her quiet admission caught me off guard. "How long?" I asked, my voice strained with the effort to remain steady. Sarah hesitated, her eyes welling with tears. It started last year," she confessed, her words heavy with remorse. "I never meant for it to happen, Mike. I never meant to hurt you." Her words hung in the air, the weight of their truth crashing over me like a wave. Anger surged within me, fueled by the betrayal I couldn't comprehend. "How could you do this to us?" I demanded, my voice rising despite my efforts to control it. Sarah looked down, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I was lost, confused. I thought—" "You thought what?" I snapped, unable to contain the bitterness that seeped into my words. "That this wouldn't destroy our marriage." Tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks now, her face contorted with anguish. "I don't know what I was thinking," she cried, her voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you, Mike. Please believe me." But belief felt like a distant shore, unreachable amidst the storm of emotions raging inside me. "How many times?" I asked quietly, my voice raw with pain. Sarah shook her head, unable to meet my gaze. "I don't know," she whispered, her admission like a knife twisting deeper into my wounded heart. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with unspoken accusations and shattered trust. I wanted to scream, to lash out at Sarah for tearing apart everything we had built together. But as I stood there, staring at the woman I had once loved with all my heart, all I felt was a numbness that threatened to consume me whole. "I need time," I finally managed to say, my voice hollow and distant. Without waiting for her response, I turned and walked away, leaving Sarah alone with the wreckage of our shattered marriage. In the days that followed our confrontation, a heavy silence settled over our home like a thick fog. Sarah's tearful confession echoed in my mind, mingling with the haunting details of her affair that I couldn't shake. Despite my initial resolve to give myself time, I found myself consumed by a relentless need to understand the full extent of Sarah's betrayal. Late one night, unable to sleep, I found myself drawn once again to Sarah's phone. It lay innocently on the bedside table, its screen dark and silent. With trembling hands, I unlocked it and began my deep dive into the labyrinth of messages, emails, and photos that chronicled Sarah's secret life. Each discovery was a fresh wound, reopening the pain and disbelief that had become my constant companions. I scrolled through text conversations that spanned months, piecing together a timeline of Sarah's infidelity that stretched back far longer than she had admitted. Names blurred together: Jake, Ethan, Mark, each a faceless phantom haunting our marriage. The messages were like breadcrumbs leading me deeper into a labyrinth of deceit, plans for clandestine meetings, whispered confessions of love, promises made and broken. I felt sick to my stomach, the weight of Sarah's betrayal crushing me with each new revelation. Yet amidst the anger and hurt, a part of me searched desperately for answers. What had driven Sarah into the arms of other men? Was our marriage so flawed, so broken, that she had sought solace elsewhere? I wrestled with these questions in the lonely hours of the night, tormented by doubts that gnawed at the edges of my sanity. It wasn't just the messages that haunted me, it was the photos too. Images of Sarah with men whose faces I couldn't place, captured in moments of intimacy that felt like a dagger through my heart. Each photo was a snapshot of the life she had hidden from me, a life that now lay shattered at my feet. I began to isolate myself, withdrawing from friends and family who had once been pillars of support. How could I face them, knowing that my marriage had been nothing but a facade? Their concerned inquiries went unanswered, drowned out by the roar of betrayal that echoed in my ears. Days turned into weeks, and still I searched, unable to stop myself from delving deeper into Sarah's digital footprint. The need for closure drove me forward, even as I feared what I might uncover next. I found myself scouring through old emails, examining phone records, piecing together fragments of a puzzle that threatened to unravel the very fabric of my existence. Sarah, too, seemed trapped in a purgatory of her own making. Her attempts at reconciliation were met with silence or terse responses from me. My heart hardened against the woman who had once been my confidant and companion. I could no longer look at her without seeing the shadow of betrayal that loomed over us both. Yet, amidst the wreckage of our shattered marriage, a small voice whispered of forgiveness. Could I find it within myself to forgive Sarah for the pain she had inflicted? Or was our love too broken, too tainted by lies and deceit to ever be repaired? As I sat alone in the darkness, Sarah's phone still clutched in my hands, I knew that the answers lay buried deep within me. But whether I could unearth them, and whether they would lead me to peace or further heartache, remained uncertain. Armed with a growing sense of determination mixed with dread, I continued my relentless pursuit of the truth. Each day brought new revelations, uncovering a timeline of betrayal that stretched back further than I had ever imagined. I spent hours meticulously combing through Sarah's phone records, emails, and social media accounts, piecing together the puzzle of her infidelity. What had initially seemed like a few isolated incidents with Jake turned out to be a pattern of deceit that spanned years, weaving through the fabric of our marriage like a hidden thread waiting to unravel. The timeline began to take shape before my eyes. Messages exchanged during business trips that had seemed innocent at the time now carried a weight of suspicion. Late-night calls that I had dismissed as work-related now echoed with the hushed tones of secret rendezvous. Names and faces began to emerge from the shadows. Men I had met briefly at social gatherings. Colleagues who had always seemed a bit too friendly with Sarah. Each revelation cut deeper than the last, shredding the remnants of trust that had once bound us together. I confronted some of the men discreetly, desperate for answers that would make sense of the chaos consuming my life. Their responses varied. Some were remorseful, expressing guilt over their role in Sarah's betrayal. Others were defensive, shifting blame onto her or insisting that it had been nothing more than a fleeting affair. But amidst the conflicting accounts and shattered illusions, One truth remained painfully clear. Sarah had deceived me, time and again, with a calculated precision that left me reeling. The unraveling of the timeline exposed not only the extent of Sarah's infidelity, but also the cracks in our marriage that I had been blind to. The late nights she had spent working overtime, the sudden business trips that had left me alone at home, the distance that had grown between us, all became pieces of a puzzle that I struggled to piece together. Yet, amid the turmoil, a part of me clung to the memories of a love that had once been real. I sifted through old photographs, searching for glimpses of the woman I had married, the woman whose smile had once lit up my world, whose laughter had been a melody that played in my heart. But the photographs now felt like relics of a bygone era, reminders of a happiness that had been tainted by betrayal. How could I reconcile the woman I had loved with the stranger who had hidden secrets behind closed doors? Sarah, too, seemed lost in a maze of regret and remorse. Her attempts at reconciliation were met with a wall of silence from me. My heart hardened against the pain that threatened to consume us both. I could no longer see a future with her, only a past that lay shattered at our feet. As the unraveling of the timeline continued, I found myself at a crossroads. Could I find it within myself to forgive Sarah for the pain she had inflicted? Or was the damage too deep, too irreparable to ever mend our fractured relationship? I knew that the answers lay buried within the shattered remnants of our marriage, waiting for me to unearth them. But whether I had the strength to confront the truth, and whether it would lead me to healing or further heartache, remained uncertain. In the midst of my relentless search for truth, memories of the early days of our marriage began to resurface with painful clarity. I couldn't help but reflect on the signs I had missed, the subtle shifts in Sarah's behavior that had hinted at the beginning of her infidelity. It was during our second year of marriage when the cracks first began to show. Sarah had always been dedicated to her career, spending long hours at the office and traveling frequently for business meetings. At first, I had admired her ambition and drive, proud to support her in pursuing her professional goals. But as the months passed, I began to notice a distance growing between us. Sarah seemed preoccupied, distracted by work obligations that left little room for our relationship. Nights once filled with laughter and shared dreams became silent, punctuated only by the glow of her laptop screen and the distant hum of her phone vibrating with notifications. I tried to reassure myself that it was just a phase, that every marriage had its ups and downs. But deep down, a nagging sense of unease took root in my heart. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, that the woman I loved was slipping away from me with each passing day. Then came the first hint of betrayal. A fleeting glance at Sarah's phone revealed a message from a coworker, Alex, that seemed innocuous at first glance. But there was an undertone, a familiarity in their exchanges that sent a chill down my spine. I confronted Sarah tentatively, hoping against hope that my suspicions were unfounded. She brushed off my concerns with practiced ease, explaining away Alex's messages as harmless banter between colleagues. Her smile was reassuring, her touch gentle, but beneath the surface, doubt gnawed at my resolve. Weeks turned into months, and Sarah's relationship with Alex continued to evolve. What had started as casual conversations soon blossomed into shared lunches, late-night phone calls, and whispered confessions of dissatisfaction with our marriage. I watched helplessly as Sarah drifted further into Alex's orbit, her laughter echoing through our home less frequently, replaced by the sound of whispered phone calls and hurried excuses. The distance between us grew until it felt insurmountable, a vast expanse of unspoken resentment and unmet expectations. Then one evening, I came home unexpectedly early from a business trip, my heart heavy with the weight of suspicion that had haunted me for months. As I stepped through the front door, the hushed voices coming from our living room froze me in my tracks. I crept closer, my pulse quickening with a mixture of dread and disbelief. Peering through the crack in the door, I saw Sarah and Alex locked in an embrace, a moment of intimacy that shattered the last vestiges of hope I had clung to. The sight of Sarah in another man's arms was like a knife through my heart, slicing through the illusions I had crafted to shield myself from the painful truth. I stood there, rooted to the spot, unable to tear my gaze away from the betrayal unfolding before me. When Sarah finally noticed me standing there, the color drained from her face. Guilt flickered in her eyes, but it was too late. The damage had been done. Without a word, I turned and walked away, leaving Sarah and Alex to face the consequences of their actions. That night marked the beginning of the end of our marriage, the moment when the cracks in our foundation widened irreparably, leaving us both adrift in a sea of regret and recrimination. As I retreated into the solitude of my own thoughts, I couldn't help but wonder how we had reached this point, and whether there was any hope left for salvaging what remained of our shattered love. The revelation of Sarah's affair with Alex plunged me into a whirlwind of emotions that I struggled to navigate. Betrayal cut through me like a knife, leaving behind a raw ache that seemed to seep into every fiber of my being. I wrestled with a tumultuous mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief as I tried to make sense of the shattered fragments of my marriage. The nights were the hardest. Alone in our once shared bed, I tossed and turned, tormented by visions of Sarah and Alex together, their whispered confessions echoing in the silence. Sleep eluded me, replaced by a relentless carousel of memories, of laughter shared, promises made, and dreams shattered beyond repair. During the day, I tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, burying myself in work to distract myself from the pain that threatened to consume me. But even the busiest moments couldn't shield me from the gnawing emptiness that settled in the pit of my stomach. I avoided social gatherings, withdrawing into myself, as I struggled to come to terms with the reality of Sarah's betrayal. Friends and family reached out with concerned inquiries, their words of comfort falling on deaf ears as I grappled with the weight of my own shattered trust. Sarah, too, seemed lost in a haze of remorse and regret. She made desperate attempts to reach out to me, pleading for forgiveness and promising to end her affair with Alex. But her words felt hollow, her promises ringing empty against the backdrop of lies and deceit that had torn us apart. "How could you do this to us?" I demanded during one of our tense confrontations, my voice thick with anger and hurt. Sarah struggled to find an answer, her own tears mingling with mine as she searched for words that could bridge the growing chasm between us. "I don't know," she admitted at last, her voice cracking with emotion. "I was lost, confused. I never meant to hurt you, Mike." Her words offered little solace. The wounds were too deep, too fresh for forgiveness to come easily. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that had become a constant companion, a shadow that loomed over every interaction with Sarah. Yet, amidst the turmoil, a part of me longed for the woman I had married, the woman whose smile had once lit up my world, whose touch had been a source of comfort in times of uncertainty. I struggled to reconcile the image of Sarah in my mind with the stranger who had hidden secrets behind closed doors. In the quiet moments of reflection, I found myself grappling with a question that haunted me to my core. Could our love survive the devastating blow of infidelity? Was there any hope left for salvaging what remained of our shattered marriage? Or were we doomed to remain adrift in a sea of regret and recrimination? As I navigated the emotional minefield of betrayal, I knew that the answers lay buried within the depths of my own shattered heart. Whether I could find the strength to confront the truth, and whether it would lead me to healing or further heartache, remained uncertain. Driven by a relentless need for clarity amidst the chaos of emotions, I embarked on a quest to seek answers that would unravel the tangled web of Sarah's infidelity. Each revelation had peeled back another layer of deception, leaving me grappling with a reality that seemed more surreal with each passing day. I reached out discreetly to some of the men whose names had surfaced in Sarah's messages: Jake, Ethan, Mark. Each encounter was fraught with tension, their responses ranging from remorseful admissions to defensive justifications. But amid their varied accounts, one thread remained consistent. Sarah had pursued relationships outside our marriage with a calculated disregard for the vows we had exchanged. Conversations with these men offered glimpses into a side of Sarah that I had never known, a woman capable of compartmentalizing her life, balancing the roles of devoted wife and clandestine lover with chilling ease. Their stories painted a portrait of a marriage that had been fractured long before I had stumbled upon Sarah's betrayal, a realization that cut deeper than any of their words could convey. Yet, amidst the sea of conflicting accounts and buried truths, I found myself grappling with a question that haunted me to my core. What had driven Sarah into the arms of other men? Was our marriage so flawed, so broken, that she had sought solace elsewhere? The answers remained elusive, obscured by layers of pain and regret that clouded my judgment. I turned inward too, searching for clues within the memories of our shared past. The early days of our courtship, filled with laughter, stolen kisses, and whispered promises, seemed like a distant dream now, a fleeting moment of happiness overshadowed by the storm clouds of betrayal. I replayed conversations in my mind, searching for missed signals, overlooked signs that might have forewarned me of the cracks in our foundation. Sarah's late nights at the office, her sudden business trips that had left me alone at home, the growing distance between us that had once seemed inconsequential. Now they formed a mosaic of missed opportunities to confront the truth. Friends and family offered their support, their words of comfort a lifeline in the storm of uncertainty that engulfed me. Yet their well-meaning inquiries only served to deepen the wounds that festered beneath the surface. How could I explain the devastation of discovering Sarah's infidelity without unraveling the fragile threads that held me together? In moments of solitude, I confronted the harsh reality that our marriage had become a battlefield strewn with broken promises and shattered trust. The once familiar contours of our home felt foreign, haunted by echoes of a love that had been tainted by lies and deceit. Sarah, too, struggled to navigate the aftermath of her betrayal. Her attempts at reconciliation were met with a wall of silence from me. My heart hardened against the woman who had once been my confidant and companion. I could no longer see a future with her, only a past that lay shattered at our feet. As I delved deeper into the labyrinth of Sarah's infidelity, I knew that the answers lay buried within the shattered remnants of our marriage, waiting for me to unearth them. But whether I could find the strength to confront the truth, and whether it would lead me to healing or further heartache, remained uncertain. In the quiet moments of reflection, I found myself retracing the steps of our marriage, searching for the subtle signs that had hinted at the unraveling of our once solid bond. Each memory surfaced with painful clarity, revealing cracks that had gone unnoticed until Sarah's betrayal shattered the illusion of our happiness. I remembered the early days of our courtship, the exhilarating rush of falling in love, the shared dreams that had seemed within reach. Sarah's laughter had echoed through our home, filling the empty spaces with a warmth that I had taken for granted. But as time passed, subtle shifts in Sarah's behavior began to emerge. Her dedication to her career had always been a source of admiration, but now it seemed to consume her, leaving little room for our relationship to thrive. Nights once filled with whispered confessions and shared hopes gave way to silence, punctuated only by the glow of her laptop screen and the distant hum of her phone vibrating with notifications. I recalled the late nights she spent at the office, her explanations for missed dinners growing increasingly vague. At the time, I had dismissed her absences as necessary sacrifices for her career, a testament to her commitment to succeed. But now, those late nights took on a different meaning, a veil of secrecy that obscured the truth of her burgeoning relationships with other men. Her sudden business trips had also raised suspicions that I had brushed aside in my eagerness to trust her. What had once seemed like opportunities for professional growth now carried the weight of suspicion, each departure leaving me alone at home with unanswered questions swirling in my mind. Then there were the changes in our intimacy, or lack thereof. What had once been a passionate connection had gradually dwindled into routine, the physical distance between us mirroring the emotional chasm that had begun to widen between Sarah and me. I replayed conversations in my mind, searching for missed signals, overlooked signs that might have forewarned me of the cracks in our foundation. Sarah's distracted responses to my inquiries, her deflection of my attempts to deepen our emotional connection, all now seemed like pieces of a puzzle that I had been too blind to piece together. Friends and family had offered their perspectives, their concerns echoing my own doubts about the state of our marriage. Looking back, their well-meaning observations had been gentle nudges toward confronting the truth, a truth that I had been reluctant to acknowledge until Sarah's infidelity forced me to confront it head-on. Yet, amidst the wreckage of our shattered marriage, a part of me clung to the memories of a love that had once been real. I sifted through old photographs, searching for glimpses of the woman I had married, the woman whose smile had once lit up my world, whose laughter had been a melody that played in my heart. But the photographs now felt like relics of a bygone era, reminders of a happiness that had been tainted by betrayal. How could I reconcile the woman I had loved with the stranger who had hidden secrets behind closed doors? As I grappled with the painful realization of Sarah's infidelity, I knew that the answers lay buried within the depths of my own shattered heart. whether I could find the strength to confront the truth, and whether it would lead me to healing or further heartache, remained uncertain. As the weight of Sarah's betrayal continued to press down on me, I found myself reaching out to an old friend for solace and guidance. Matt had been my confidant since college, a steadfast presence in my life through ups and downs. I knew that if anyone could help me make sense of the turmoil I was experiencing, it was him. One evening after work, I invited Matt over to my place under the pretense of catching up over a few beers. As we settled into my living room, the familiar comfort of his presence eased some of the tension that had been building within me. "So, what's been going on, Mike?" Matt asked casually, taking a sip of his beer. His eyes, however, held a hint of concern, as if he sensed the weight of my unspoken turmoil. I hesitated, unsure of where to begin. How could I explain the devastation of discovering Sarah's infidelity without unraveling the fragile threads that held me together? But Matt's patient gaze encouraged me to speak, to finally unburden myself of the heavy secrets that had been weighing me down. I found out that Sarah has been cheating on me," I confessed quietly, my voice cracking with emotion. Matt's expression softened, his brow furrowing with sympathy. "Oh, Mike, I'm so sorry to hear that," he murmured, setting his beer aside to give me his full attention. I took a deep breath, struggling to find the words to articulate the pain that had consumed me since confronting Sarah. "It's been hell, Matt," I admitted, the weight of my confession hanging heavy in the air between us. "I never saw it coming. I thought we were happy." Matt nodded slowly, his expression somber. "I know how much you loved her, Mike," he said quietly. "But sometimes people change. Sometimes we don't see the signs until it's too late." His words resonated with the painful truth that I'd been grappling with. I don't understand why she did it," I confessed, my voice thick with emotion. "Was our marriage really that broken?" Matt leaned forward, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "It's not your fault, Mike," he said firmly. "Sometimes people make choices that hurt the ones they love. It doesn't mean there was anything you could have done differently." I nodded slowly, absorbing his words like a lifeline in the storm of uncertainty that had engulfed me. "I've been trying to make sense of it all," I admitted, searching for answers, but it just feels like everything I thought I knew has been turned upside down. "That's natural, Mike," Matt replied gently. "But you don't have to go through this alone. You have friends who care about you, who want to support you through this." I felt a flicker of hope stir within me, a glimmer of light amidst the darkness that had settled over my life since discovering Sarah's betrayal. "Thanks, Matt," I said softly, grateful for his unwavering support. "I don't know what I would do without you." Matt offered me a reassuring smile, his eyes reflecting the depth of our friendship. "Anytime, Mike. You know I've got your back." As we sat together in the quiet of my living room, the weight of my burden felt a little lighter. Confiding in Matt had given me a sense of clarity and strength, reminding me that I didn't have to face the aftermath of Sarah's infidelity alone. But amidst the comfort of friendship, a daunting question lingered in the back of my mind. Where did I go from here? The road ahead seemed uncertain, obscured by the shadows of betrayal that continued to haunt me. In the wake of confiding in Matt, I found myself at a crossroads, faced with the daunting task of making decisions that would shape the course of my future, regardless of the wreckage of my shattered marriage. Days blurred into weeks as I grappled with the aftermath of Sarah's infidelity, the weight of her betrayal a constant presence in my thoughts. Yet amidst the turmoil, a glimmer of clarity began to emerge, a resolve to confront the painful truth and chart a path forward, however uncertain it might be. I knew that I couldn't continue living in limbo, trapped between the shards of broken trust and unanswered questions. The time had come to make a decision, to confront Sarah and confront the reality of our fractured marriage. One evening, I found myself standing outside our bedroom door, my heart pounding in my chest, as I gathered the courage to face Sarah once more. The air was heavy with unspoken tension, the walls of our home echoing with the silence that had settled between us since the revelation of her infidelity. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the door and stepped inside. Sarah looked up from her book, her expression guarded as she met my gaze. There was a weariness in her eyes, a reflection of the pain and regret that had carved deep lines into her once carefree demeanor. "We need to talk," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging within me. Sarah's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of fear crossing her features before she nodded slowly. "Okay," she replied softly, setting her book aside and turning to face me fully. I hesitated, struggling to find the right words to articulate the turmoil that had consumed me since discovering her betrayal. I I can't keep pretending that everything is okay," I began, my voice wavering slightly. "I've been trying to make sense of what happened, of why you did what you did." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, her hands trembling as she reached out to me. "Mike, I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I never meant to hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen." Her words pierced through the armor of anger and resentment that had hardened around my heart. I struggled to maintain my composure, to resist the urge to lash out in pain and frustration. But beneath the layers of betrayal, I saw the woman I had loved, the woman who had once been my confidant and companion. "Why, Sarah?" I asked quietly, my voice breaking with the weight of my unspoken anguish. "Why did you cheat on me? Was our marriage really that broken?" Sarah's shoulders slumped, her gaze dropping to her lap as she struggled to find the words to answer my questions. I don't know," she admitted at last, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was lost, confused. I felt like we were drifting apart, and I didn't know how to fix it." Her admission struck a chord within me, a painful reminder of the distance that had grown between us in the wake of her infidelity. "I thought we were happy," I said quietly, the words heavy with the weight of my shattered illusions. I thought we had something real." Sarah looked up at me then, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We did, Mike," she insisted earnestly. "We do. Please, please don't give up on us." Her plea tugged at my heart, stirring a conflicting swirl of emotions within me. Part of me longed to believe that we could salvage what remained of our shattered love, that forgiveness was within reach, if only I could find the strength to forgive her. But another part of me recoiled from the pain of her betrayal, from the shattered trust that seemed irreparable. Could I truly move past the wounds that Sarah's infidelity had inflicted? Could our love survive the devastating blow that had torn us apart? As I stood before Sarah, grappling with the weight of my decisions, I knew that the answers lay within the depths of my own shattered heart. Whether I could find the courage to confront the truth, and whether it would lead me to healing or further heartache, remained uncertain. The conversation with Sarah left me grappling with conflicting emotions and a profound sense of uncertainty. Despite the pain of her betrayal, a part of me still held on to the hope that our marriage could be salvaged, that we could somehow find a way to heal the wounds that had torn us apart. After much deliberation, I broached the idea of marriage counseling with Sarah. It was a last-ditch effort to confront the issues that had plagued our relationship and to find a path forward, however rocky it might be. At first, Sarah was hesitant, her defenses still erected against the pain of confronting our fractured marriage. But after several days of tense silence and restless nights, she agreed to give counseling a chance, if only to explore whether there was any hope left for us. We found a therapist recommended by a friend, a soft-spoken woman with a kind smile and a reassuring demeanor. The first session was tense, filled with awkward silences and guarded responses as we struggled to navigate the wreckage of our shattered trust. The therapist encouraged us to speak openly and honestly about our feelings, to confront the painful truths that had driven us apart. I hesitated, unsure of where to begin, but Sarah surprised me with her willingness to confront her own actions and the impact they had on our marriage. "I never meant to hurt you," she admitted tearfully, her voice thick with emotion. "I was lost, confused. I didn't know how to communicate what I was feeling, and I made a terrible mistake." Her words echoed the sentiments she had expressed during our private conversations, but hearing them in the presence of a neutral third party lent them a weight that I hadn't fully appreciated before. The therapist nodded empathetically, guiding us through exercises designed to rebuild trust and communication. Weeks turned into months as we attended counseling sessions regularly, each one marked by moments of breakthrough and setbacks. Sarah opened up about her insecurities and fears, her struggles to reconcile the demands of her career with the expectations of our marriage. I, too, confronted my own role in the deterioration of our relationship, the moments of neglect and complacency that had contributed to the growing distance between us. The therapist challenged us to listen to each other without judgment, to validate our respective experiences and emotions. Slowly, tentatively, a fragile sense of hope began to take root within me, a belief that perhaps, against all odds, we could find a way back to each other. Sarah's commitment to change and her efforts to rebuild trust were evident, and I found myself cautiously optimistic that we could overcome the wounds of her betrayal. But beneath the surface of newfound hope, doubts lingered. Doubts about whether our efforts were enough to bridge the chasm that had widened between us. Doubts about whether I could truly forgive Sarah for the pain she had inflicted. As we continued our journey through counseling, I grappled with the daunting question that had haunted me since discovering Sarah's infidelity. Could our love survive the devastating blow of betrayal? Or were we destined to remain adrift in a sea of regret and recrimination? The therapist's guidance offered a lifeline in the storm of uncertainty, urging us to confront our fears and insecurities with honesty and compassion. But whether I could find the strength to confront the truth, and whether it would lead me to healing or further heartache, remained uncertain. Amidst the ongoing counseling sessions, Sarah's demeanor gradually shifted, a quiet resolve tempered by moments of vulnerability that she had long kept hidden. It was during one particularly emotional session that she finally found the courage to confront the full extent of her actions and the pain she had caused. The therapist had guided us through an exercise designed to promote open communication and emotional honesty. Sitting across from me, Sarah took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she struggled to find the right words. "I need to tell you something," she began softly, her voice thick with emotion. "Something I've been keeping from you." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach, a familiar pang of apprehension mingling with the faint glimmer of hope that had begun to stir within me. "What is it, Sarah?" I asked quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. "It's about Alex," she admitted at last, her words coming out in a rush. He wasn't the only one." Shock rippled through me like a tidal wave, threatening to engulf the fragile sense of hope that had begun to take root within me. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, my voice tinged with disbelief. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she met my gaze. "There were others, Mike," she confessed tearfully. I had affairs with other men too." The air in the room seemed to grow heavy with the weight of her admission, the words hanging between us like a shroud of betrayal that threatened to suffocate me. I struggled to process the magnitude of her confession, the realization that Sarah's infidelity ran deeper than I had ever imagined. "Why, Sarah?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt. "How could you do this to us?" Sarah buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I don't know," she sobbed brokenly. I was so lost, Mike. I didn't know how to fix what was broken between us, and I made terrible choices." Her words cut through me like a knife, reopening wounds that I had tried so desperately to heal. The therapist intervened gently, guiding us through the emotional storm that had erupted in the wake of Sarah's confession. She encouraged Sarah to delve deeper into her motivations, to confront the underlying issues that had driven her to seek solace outside our marriage. As Sarah spoke, a painful truth began to emerge, a truth that shattered the fragile sense of hope I had clung to since the discovery of her initial affair. Her insecurities, her fear of inadequacy, her struggles to balance her career aspirations with the demands of our marriage, all had contributed to the unraveling of our once solid bond. But amidst the wreckage of her confession, a flicker of understanding began to take root within me, a recognition that Sarah's actions, however hurtful, were born out of her own pain and confusion. Beneath the layers of betrayal, I saw the woman I had loved, the woman who had once been my partner and companion. Yet the wounds of her infidelity remained raw, the trust that had been shattered irreparably damaged. Could I find the strength to forgive Sarah for the pain she had inflicted? Could our love survive the devastating blow that had torn us apart? As I grappled with these questions, I knew that the answers lay buried within the depths of my own shattered heart. Whether I could find the courage to confront the truth, and whether it would lead me to healing or further heartache, remained uncertain. Sarah's confession echoed in my mind long after the counseling session ended. The weight of her betrayal hung heavy between us, casting a shadow over the fragile hope that had begun to emerge amidst the wreckage of our shattered marriage. Days turned into weeks as we navigated the aftermath of her revelation. The therapist encouraged us to continue exploring our feelings and to communicate openly, but the road ahead seemed daunting, a minefield of emotions and uncertainties that threatened to engulf us both. I found myself retreating into solitude, seeking solace in quiet moments of reflection as I grappled with the painful reality of Sarah's infidelity. The wounds of her betrayal ran deep, leaving behind scars that seemed to ache with every breath. Sarah, too, wrestled with her own remorse and guilt, making desperate attempts to rebuild trust and repair the damage she had caused. She sought forgiveness with a fervor that bordered on desperation, pleading for a second chance to prove that she could change. But despite her efforts, the specter of her infidelity loomed large over our attempts at reconciliation. I struggled to reconcile the woman I had loved, the woman whose laughter had once been a melody in my heart, with the stranger who had hidden secrets behind closed doors. Friends and family offered their perspectives, their well-meaning advice a constant presence in the tumultuous sea of emotions that engulfed us. Some urged me to walk away, to protect myself from further heartache and betrayal. Others urged patience and forgiveness, believing in the possibility of redemption and healing. In moments of clarity, I confronted the harsh truth that our marriage had become a fragile tapestry of broken promises and shattered trust. The future seemed uncertain, obscured by the shadows of our past and the wounds that continued to fester between us. Yet, amidst the turmoil, a small voice within me whispered of resilience and possibility, a belief that perhaps, against all odds, we could find a way to move forward together. Sarah's willingness to confront her actions and her efforts to change sparked a flicker of hope within me, a hope that maybe, just maybe, love could triumph over betrayal. Together, we continued attending counseling sessions, each one marked by moments of vulnerability and tentative steps toward understanding. The therapist guided us through exercises designed to rebuild trust and strengthen our emotional connection, urging us to confront our fears and insecurities with honesty and compassion. Slowly, hesitantly, a fragile sense of reconciliation began to take root within me, a recognition that Sarah's actions, however painful, were rooted in her own struggles and insecurities. Beneath the layers of betrayal, I saw glimpses of the woman I had loved, the woman whose presence had once brought warmth and joy into my life. But as we navigated the uncertain terrain of healing and forgiveness, I knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Could I find the strength to forgive Sarah for the pain she had inflicted? Could she earn back the trust that had been shattered by her infidelity? As I grappled with these questions, I realized that moving forward would require courage and resilience, a willingness to confront the painful truths of our past and to embrace the uncertain possibilities of our future. Whether our love could survive the devastating blow of betrayal remained uncertain, but the journey toward healing had begun. And as we took tentative steps forward, I clung to the hope that, against all odds, we could find a way to rebuild what had been broken, to rediscover the love that had once bound us together, and to forge a new path forward, however uncertain it might be. The weeks following Sarah's confession were a tumultuous journey of introspection, forgiveness, and tentative steps toward rebuilding our fractured relationship. The wounds of her infidelity remained raw, but amidst the pain and uncertainty, a glimmer of hope began to take root, a hope that, against all odds, we could find a way to move forward together. We continued attending counseling sessions, each one a crucible of emotions as we navigated the complexities of trust, communication, and forgiveness. The therapist provided a guiding hand, encouraging us to confront our fears and insecurities with honesty and compassion. Sarah's commitment to change was evident in her actions, her willingness to be transparent, her efforts to rebuild trust, and her determination to address the underlying issues that had driven her to seek solace outside our marriage. She apologized repeatedly, her words a balm to the wounds that had festered within me. For my part, I wrestled with my own demons, the lingering doubts, the fear of vulnerability, and the pain of betrayal that threatened to overshadow any progress we made. But as I delved deeper into the complexities of our relationship, I began to recognize the resilience and strength that had once bound us together. In moments of clarity, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this point, the highs and lows, the laughter and tears, and the shared moments that had defined our love. Despite the scars of betrayal, I realized that our connection ran deeper than the pain that had threatened to tear us apart. Slowly, tentatively, we began to rediscover each other, a process marked by moments of joy and apprehension as we navigated the uncertain terrain of rebuilding trust and intimacy. We shared our hopes and fears, our dreams for the future, and our commitment to forging a new path forward, however rocky it might be. With each passing day, the wounds of Sarah's infidelity began to heal, replaced by a renewed sense of connection and understanding. We took tentative steps toward creating new memories together, learning from the mistakes of our past and embracing the possibilities of our future. And amidst the complexities of reconciliation, I found myself grateful for the resilience of love, for its ability to endure, to forgive, and to transcend the pain of betrayal. Our journey toward healing was far from over, but as we embraced the challenges and uncertainties ahead, I knew that we had embarked on a new chapter of our lives, a chapter defined by resilience, hope, and the enduring power of love. As Sarah and I stood together, hand in hand, facing the horizon of our shared future, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, a recognition that, despite the scars of our past, we had found our way back to each other. Our love had weathered the storm, emerging stronger and more resilient than before. And as we embraced the possibilities of new beginnings, I knew that our journey together was far from over. That with courage, compassion, and a steadfast commitment to each other, we could navigate whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that our love would guide us through.